All right, good morning. Good morning, school. Ding, ding, ding. Class is back in session. What up, folks? How are you this morning? Welcome to Thursday. This is Thirsty Thursday. You know how we do it here at the school. I want to see some biceps flying in the comments here shortly, and I want to know where you guys are at and where you're located. So go ahead and drop a couple muscle contractions in the comments before we get going here. Today's episode is going to be called, I'm going to call this one CarboVORE or CarboWAR. Are carbs good or bad? Jeez, it's confusing, isn't it? It's hard to know if carbs are good for you or if they are deteriorating your health. And we're going to get into that answer. I'm going to answer that question. Are carbs good or bad? So I hope you guys are ready. We might shatter some paradigms and hurt some feelings today, or we might not. We might make you very happy with the program you're currently on. So as you guys are jumping on, go ahead and comment where you're at, where you're located. The school comes to you every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. That's Pacific Standard Time, 9 a.m. You can watch the show here on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you guys are on YouTube, say what's up. And if you want to take the show on the go, take the school on the go, you can do so with the podcast app on iTunes. Please do a review. It helps the show get traction. Please do that today if you can. Go to itunes.com, look up the School of Shred, do a quick review. I'll hook you up with a free gift. And then we also are on Spotify. So hitting a lot of these networks. So whatever your preferred place to get podcasts is, go ahead and jump on that and be about it. If you guys want to learn more about the show, go to schoolshredpodcast.com, jump on the newsletter. If you're on the newsletter, you guys should have got your daily email today at 8:30. Hopefully you read it. If not, check your emails. With that, let's get into it, huh? First of all, thank you to everybody who tuned into the webinar last night, 7 p.m. That was fun. We did a whole hour and a half training on how you can shred half your body fat from home. Yikes, I know. Isn't that a bold statement? That's a bold statement, John. Why would you say a thing like that? Well, because it's true, because you can do it. You gotta be smart about it. And you might have to utilize this thing that I've been talking about called holistic health and fitness. There's many components to living a truly healthy life. It's not just about exercise and diet. And we went deep into that last night. So everybody had a lot of fun and really excited about that. The next one's tomorrow at 6 p.m., Friday at 6 p.m. And that will be August 21st at 6 p.m. So are carbs good or bad? What do you guys think? Can I get a comment? Are carbs good or bad? Throw your best guess in the comments. Come on, people. Let's see it. What do we got? Good? Bad? No? I mean, they taste good, right? They taste good. Just at least give me that. If you think carbs taste good, I want you to throw some fire in the comments right now. Who likes carbohydrates? Who's a carbo? There we go. Who's a CarboVORE? Who likes them? I like carbohydrates too. Some people don't think I like carbohydrates though, because I eat a lot of fat and very little carbs. But anyway, are carbs good or bad? Well, the first question we need to ask is for who? For who is this person? What is their goal? That's what's going to guide us in our program, in our decision-making process. So who's the person? It's not a demographic. It's an individual. There's a collection of things we need to be looking at when looking at carb tolerance and does somebody need carbohydrates in their diet? Will they be useful? Furthermore, in getting to the goal, what is the goal? There's a big difference between somebody who's a hard gainer or considered the somatotype of an ectomorph, okay, and somebody who needs to lose 50 pounds and they want to get lean. Okay, if you have a little extra body fat on you, today, I'm going to be talking mostly to you. If you have some body fat on you and you want to gain some muscle, Like you want to gain a little bit of muscle, you want to be lean, and you also want to lose body fat. That's primarily who I'm going to talk to today. So I am, that is a disclaimer as I get into this. I'm going to try and do a good job of quantifying and qualifying what I say, because there is no one size fits all solution. This is exactly what I do with clientele, is it's custom to them. So if that goal is to lose some body fat, okay, well then maybe we might pull some carbohydrates. And then the next thing is, what do they have available? And what I mean by what do they have available is, do they have any food sensitivities going on? Do they have any allergies? Do they have irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut, diabetes, any metabolic syndrome? See, the thing that I don't particularly appreciate is when fitness professionals say that everybody should be eating carbs and we shouldn't demonize carbs, and you should be able to eat rice and potatoes. Well, you don't know that though, because when you get a client, a lot of times they are compromised. They have a compromised system. So what works for somebody who's already in shape could be a hell of a lot different than what somebody needs to actually get more metabolically resilient and fix leaky gut. There's a huge difference there. We have to look at this. Just because you like carbohydrates and you feel healthy on them and you can get a good pump and a good workout in the gym does not mean that somebody who wants to lose 20 pounds needs to utilize them right now. We can throw anything under the bus. We can throw broccoli under the bus. If somebody's got leaky gut and broccoli is causing them gastrointestinal issues right now, they're in a spot where they don't have that available. They don't have that gut health available to them. We have to create that. And how do we create that? We have to look at the entire system and we have to jumpstart it. And so this might look like an elimination diet. It might look like you strip things down, get rid of the big offenders, the big toxins that we know of, being like gluten and dairy, maybe eggs. There's a lot of them, a few of them that can be problematic to the gut. And then we start to build this back in. So you go to like a meat and vegetables diet, and then you start to build back in some certain carbs and see how the body reacts to them. But we need to fix or try to improve digestion if somebody doesn't have some of this stuff available. And that's what available is. Like, what do they have? Do they have food sensitivities? Like, what are they bringing to the table? You might not need carbs right now if those carbs are causing issues in your GI tract. You might not need carbs right now if you're in a compromised state where you have excess inflammation. Carbohydrate. Hydrate is in the word. Carbs will pull water into the body, right? Yeah, it's really good when it pulls water into the muscle cell. Precisely 1 gram of carb pulls 2.7 grams of water, 2.79964,357 grams to be perfectly accurate. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. You should laugh when I make a joke. But they do that. However, in excess, carbohydrates can spill over and cause more inflammation. And this is why when people start to diet and fix their gut health, they lose a lot of weight right away. Well, it's usually because they're flushing out a lot of water in that defensive response. So we want to look at that. It's the whole sponge analogy that I've used before. It's like, if you have a dry sponge and you start to dump water on it, that sponge is going to start to absorb that water. But it's going to get to a point where there's going to be spillage, where now the water's spilling out over the sponge. That is like carbohydrates. You should be eating enough that supplies your demand if you are tolerant to them, okay? And it's within your goals and it works for you and you have good gut health available to you. Then you want to try and eat within means of what's your activity level, okay? But just this binary thinking of carbs are good or carbs are bad, we got to lose that if you really want to get healthy. We cannot be binary, yes, no, black, white issues here. Okay. We got to look a little deeper into this thing and start to fit it to the individual. So that's what we want to look at. What kind of stuff are you bringing to the table that might be affecting your carb tolerance? Carbs are not inherently evil. Okay. They raise blood glucose, which puts insulin to work. Okay, so what we need to look at is taking care of insulin, because insulin is super important. We love insulin. Insulin gets us out of jams. We love insulin. Your pancreas secretes insulin. So when you eat carbohydrates, what happens is your blood sugar will go up. Blood sugar goes up, insulin's released from the pancreas. What insulin does is it manages the amount of sugar in your blood, because sugar in the blood can become toxic at high levels. And so insulin will take this glucose and it will transport it into the muscle cell, the liver, and the adipose tissue, also known as the fat tissue. And so we really need insulin because it's the only hormone that regulates blood sugar and brings blood sugar down, okay, when it gets high. It's the only guy. So this is why eating a low carbohydrate diet can be very beneficial, because you're taking care of insulin. When you exercise and you resistance train and you cause demand of the muscle tissue, you're taking care of insulin. You want to take care of insulin, you guys. It's not an evil thing. It's not like, oh, insulin's bad, we always got to keep it down. You're keeping it down so you're sensitive to insulin. So when you eat carbohydrates or you eat protein and insulin rises, your body can store that efficiently and be resilient. So this whole thing really is more about insulin and blood sugar management. It's not about carbs being good or bad, because every food secretes insulin. Protein secretes insulin. Okay, this whole notion that you have to have carbs post-workout. Carbs post-workout can be beneficial because it can speed up the rate at which you synthesize or resynthesize glycogen. But saying that they're absolutely essential after workout is totally false. You don't have to drink sugary chocolate milk after workout. Protein on its own has enough insulinogenic response to store it back in the muscle and to get that protein to the muscle where it needs to start the rebuilding process. So every food is insulinogenic. We're trying to take care of insulin. And so with that said, that's where eating a lot of small meals every day and constantly spiking insulin can be problematic, unless you want to try and gain. What is your goal? If your goal is to gain, you want to actually utilize insulin. What I would recommend is that you have periods where you kick back on the response of insulin. So maybe you do some fasting in the middle of a bulk to try and sensitize your body to its effects. But that's really important to look at, is like carbs are not inherently evil. It's the insulinogenic response over time that could be problematic and spiking blood glucose. If you're finding carbohydrates that manage blood glucose variability, that's a real healthy thing. I actually use carbohydrates sometimes when I'm doing like real low calorie, almost carnivore style eating. I use carbs to actually soothe my central nervous system, and it can bring my blood glucose down. So blood glucose will actually start to rise the longer I'm on a hypocaloric diet that's just high in protein and fat. In the beginning, it's obviously good, but it'll start to rise. And that's when I know my cortisol is high, because my body's stressed from hypocaloric dieting. I have some carbs, might have something really simple, real simple carbs that spike blood glucose, like raw honey. And my blood glucose will go down because insulin went to work, stored it. And if it's just the right amount, it's not overworking. So insulin will take that sugar, store it where it needs to store it. And then it brings that blood sugar down and keeps it nice and stable. So you can strategically use carbohydrates to help your metabolism. So it's not inherently evil, though. I got to say that again. It's just that we want to control insulin. That's really what it is. I don't care what food source it is. If you're eating egg whites and you're spiking insulin, it's not good. No, it's not good. You want to try to control this thing if the goal, say, is fat loss. And we'll get into kind of the implications of muscle gain and all that here in a second. So that's kind of walking through what insulin does. Again, you guys, we want to take care of insulin. So the hormones that can raise blood glucose are growth hormone, epinephrine, norepinephrine, which are your adrenaline hormones, cortisol, and glucagon. All 5 of those guys can raise blood glucose. And 4 of those, so glucagon can go up when when there's activity or whatever, and you need to produce more sugar. But something like cortisol, just you getting stressed without ever putting food in your mouth can raise your glucose. This is why stress is so important to manage. If you're stressed out, you're going to be creating high blood sugar, whether you're eating carbs or not. And so over time, it's like if you start to look at how a lot of people operate, is they're overstressed, overworked, overcaffeinated, which caffeine secretes more cortisol. They eat carbs to try and get that temporary relief, because without knowing it, carbs reduce cortisol, but then they get low blood sugar because they might eat sources that really plummet their blood glucose, and then they caffeinate up again, and they're going and going and going, and then they're working out, and you can see what happens with this overstressed society that we have. Diabetes sometimes isn't just going to be from food. It's going to be from your lifestyle. So being stressed out all the time and having adrenaline pumping through your body, that's releasing glucose. So something that's really important to look at. You can probably eat more carbohydrates if you're not stressed out. So anyway, fat loss is about being metabolically resilient. Okay. Metabolically resilient. And so eating carbs can be a part of that process. You want to be metabolically resilient, metabolically flexible. The first thing I'll get into is what is metabolic flexibility. So this is the reason that I don't do carbohydrates unless it's like at night before bed. If you dump carbs into your system for breakfast, what's going to happen is your body's going to get more dependent on glucose because it's an easier fuel source to burn. So you're not going to be as metabolically flexible. I'm trying to remember the doctor's name who's done a lot of this research and whatnot, but Jacob something. I'm going to try and think of that for you guys. But anyway, metabolic flexibility is the body's ability to go back and forth between burning body fat, also could be called ketones, and burning glucose, which is sugar. So if you dump a bunch of sugar into your system in the morning, and it could come from oatmeal, that's a complex carb, it could come from a sweet potato, it could come from a Snickers bar, your body's going to process it the same on some degree here. As far as this metabolic flexibility thing, obviously those are different carb sources with different nutrition, but for the sake of the point I'm trying to make is that your body will become reliant now on this glucose. And so what happens is a couple hours later, after your body releases insulin and it stores all that sugar, you got low blood sugar, now you become hungry again. So you need another bump. So typically people who eat higher carbohydrate diets need to eat that every 2 to 3 hours, like you probably hear about and read about a lot, which is because they're getting low blood sugar. So when you eat higher fat, higher fat and fasting kind of go together, because when you eat higher fat for breakfast and lower protein, even you do like moderate protein. So like you could do some eggs and avocado, maybe some eggs and bacon and butter on it or something. You'll forget about lunch and it makes it easier to fast. And the reason it makes it easier to fast is because you stay satiated. It balances out hunger hormones. This is why a calorie is not a calorie. It causes two different hormonal responses. 100 calories from fat and 100 calories from sugar is going to cause two different hormonal responses. And there's going to be two different hunger signals sent when those guys burn off. And so you could be more successful cutting carbohydrates out if you're trying to manage and stay in a calorie deficit. And especially in the morning when you want to be metabolically flexible. So if you get your body to a state where it's able to basically jump back and forth between burning, you're kind of keto-ish, where you're burning fat and you're burning carbs throughout the day. You have lunch, which might be low carb. And then after a workout at night, you have some carbs. And then maybe before bed, you have a big bolus of carbs to help ease the central nervous system, decrease cortisol, which decreases that fight or flight response, which increases the rest and digest response that we want to be highest when we go to bed. Carbs can be beneficial at night. Carbohydrates can, I'm going to get into that here in a second. I want to finish this point. So fat loss is about being metabolically flexible and resilient. Metabolic resiliency is when you can go for periods of time without eating and your blood sugar isn't all erratic. If you are watching this right now or listening to this and you think, man, I get hangry though, I have to eat breakfast or I have to eat my snacks, you're not metabolically resilient. The human body is meant to be able to go for feast famine cycles, long periods of time without eating. It's where cellular autophagy happens. I mean, look at some of the research that's come out about fasting now and how beneficial that is. Humans are not, we don't have to eat every couple hours. Your body's in a regular swing that's memorizing your eating pattern. So it'll make you feel hungry at those times, but you can change that. Now, if you have blood sugar dysregulation, you might want to sit on the sideline right now because I'm not trying to give you advice. If you were my client, I would, but we'd be testing blood chemistry and blood glucose and all that stuff. The whole thing here, though, is that if you feel like you're like up and down with sugar cravings and you need to eat and, there's this whole thing of you get hangry, that right there is a sign and a symptom that you could possibly not be metabolically resilient. And you need to work on that. There's things that you can do to work on that. Low carbohydrate dieting can work on that, where you bring blood glucose down and you save it. You save those spikes in insulin for later on down the line. So that's a really important thing to look at. There we go. We got some good comments coming in. That's right, baby. Big money info. Yeah. All right. Thanks for playing along and commenting here. I'll pay you later for that. Thank you. But anyway, this is really, really important, okay, to look at. You need to be metabolically resilient. So fasting, short-term fast, maybe skipping breakfast one day, maybe doing higher fat, lower carb, that might really help you. So maybe you might be a CarboWAR right now. You might be a CarboWAR. You might not be a CarboVORE. But that's what fat loss is all about. It's not just about cutting a certain macronutrient. Fat loss is about creating this resilient metabolism that's flexible to burn both sugar for fuel and fat for fuel. And this can take some time. You know, I work out now and I'll go deadlift several hundred pounds in the middle of a 24-hour fast, not have a protein shake, not have anything post-workout, work a 6-hour day, come home and then eat. And that's taken a long time to do. I've also, done days where I go to jujitsu at noon and I go do hard sparring for an hour with my brothers and sisters in jujitsu. Shout out to my jujitsu community if you guys are watching this. But I'll do hard sparring, then go to the gym and do a hard workout, then go work my full shift and go home and eat by 10 o'clock at night. That's metabolic resiliency. I don't have to rely on food. I did all that activity. Now that's taken a few years to get to, so I don't recommend that you go out and do that right away. But what I'm saying is that right there is like the epitome of metabolic resiliency, is my body is able to adjust and create enough fuel to get through the day, through a couple intense workouts, through a full day of work with just water and maybe some bone broth. That's pretty impressive. And that's something that maybe you don't utilize it all the time. Maybe you don't have to do that every day. It's pretty extreme. But if you have to do it, if push comes to shove, you want your body to be able to do that. So muscle gain is about being insulin sensitive. And so you want to actually utilize insulin sensitivity when you're trying to gain muscle again. Okay. And so if you're a CarboVORE in this scenario, we want to be looking at utilizing insulin production. And we usually do this through carbs. And so the loose recommendation a lot of times, if you're trying to gain muscle and weight, you got to eat a lot of carbs. Well, why are you doing that? Because you're trying to spike insulin. Okay. You're trying to spike insulin again. It's just you're using carbs as a tool to spike insulin. And what that does is that can help you store more. Insulin is a storage hormone. So you store more amino acids in the muscle. They can create more tissue and rebuild and regenerate. So that's all good stuff. However, short breaks where maybe you do some fasting and you try to, work on and improve your metabolic resiliency, even when you're in a surplus, is especially important. A lot in the natural bodybuilding community, people do mini cuts in the middle of a bulk. They might do an 8 to 12 month bulk, but every 3 to 4 months they're doing a little mini cut. And the implications of this are good because it keeps you sensitive to insulin's response. Because what happens is if you just constantly spike insulin on a bulk and you're eating 4 to 6 times a day, you'll gain muscle in the beginning most likely, but what happens over time is you just start dumping it into fat tissue because, again, that sponge effect that I told you guys earlier, you'll start to overspill. So it's good to do a little cleanup and get your body sensitive to insulin again. Again, it's not the carbs. It's the carbs are the tool, right? You could do a bulk on just protein and you're still going to spike insulin to a certain amount, just to a lesser amount. But we do want to be taking care of insulin. Use it to your advantage. So what is good about carbs? All right, where can carbs be beneficial in our diet? Carbs can reduce cortisol. Okay, like I explained earlier, cortisol is one of the many tools of the devil. No, I'm just kidding. That's from The Water Boy. I do a lot of movie quotes on here. So, but anyway, cortisol is part of the sympathetic branch of your nervous system, which is the fight or flight response. We want that to be high in the beginning of the day. It's called the cortisol awakening response. You can call that CAR. If you wake up in the morning and you're like wide awake and you're ready to get after it, that means that cortisol is nice and high. If you have a cup of coffee, coffee stimulates the nervous system by creating more cortisol. So stress does that. Traffic might do that. Waking up the dogs barking might help your cortisol awakening response. But anyway, carbs can reduce cortisol later in the day, which is a good thing. So if you're trying to get restful sleep at night, if you guys have ever noticed, if you have carbs and you get sleepy, yeah, you're tapping into a parasympathetic response. That's a good thing if you utilize it the right way, which is exactly why it might not be good for breakfast. Eating carbs for breakfast might not be good. Even if a big portion of your calories comes from carbohydrates, I would recommend today that you stop doing carbs in the morning and you start doing them a little bit at lunch and more of them at the end of your day, which can help soothe the central nervous system and reduce physiological stress. So I know for me, like I said, when I'm on a hypocaloric diet and I'm exercising a lot, I'm doing like a famine cycle. I like to do feast famine cycles with my nutrition. Sometimes I have to actually eat carbohydrates like strategically to reduce some stress on the body, because your body gets stressed out on a hypocaloric diet. It gets stressed out when you have a lack of carbohydrates for a long period of time. So carbs also provide vitamin C. Vitamin C is really important to the adrenals and lowering cortisol as well. Your adrenal glands are the #1 storage site for vitamin C in your body. Your adrenal glands are where a lot of it's where you're producing your epinephrine, norepinephrine, so all the adrenaline, all of your stress and rest responses are coming from those adrenals. And so having vitamin C helps those guys function correctly. And so you get those from carbohydrates, specifically like fruits and whatnot, like berries are really high in them, but carbs contain vitamin C, higher amounts than like meat. Anyway, they help with neurotransmitter production. When you eat carbs, it helps create more neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitter production can actually help increase melatonin. Melatonin is your sleepy hormone. So again, carbs are good. They're just better at night because they can help with this neurotransmitter production you need before bed to produce more melatonin, which is your sleepy hormone. They can also help lower blood glucose by using small amounts of insulin. So if your body's insulin sensitive and you keep it there where you don't eat a ton of carbs and you kind of cycle your carbohydrate intake like direct carbs, this can actually help. So like I was telling you earlier, my personal experience is I will notice the further I'm on a diet, my blood sugar can actually start to creep up a little bit if my body is getting stressed. And I can almost feel now, like intuitively, the adrenaline that's kind of always there from being on a low calorie diet. And I test my blood sugar every day. I'll eat some carbohydrates and then my blood sugar goes down. Well, that lets me know that I'm sensitive and insulin did its job and it lowered blood sugar. And so carbs can be strategically used for that. So great stuff. How are carbs bad? Okay, so we're going to hit both sides of this thing because it's not binary thinking, it's a gradient. Okay, there's good and bad things, and there's a whole continuum of where they could be useful based off who you are, what your goal is, and all of that. So blood sugar dysregulation can happen when you're eating excess carbs. Depending on the carbs you're eating, you can have all these fluctuations in your blood glucose throughout the day. That can age the body, that can wear out insulin and make you insulin resistant over time. Type 2 diabetes is running rampant in this country. The CDC has reported that 113 million people out of 320 million people in this country. So 1/3 of the populace here in the United States is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And that means altered blood sugar numbers. And that's just over 110 fasting glucose in the morning. That's not considering like 90 to 110, which is already should be a little bit problematic. Like you don't have to be diagnosed with diabetes to have the negative effects associated with erratic blood sugar. So this is something that's really interesting because when I got into this and I learned about blood sugar dysregulation and started testing my own blood sugar, there was days I was waking up from carbohydrate intake, even though I was lean and I looked healthy, I was seeing that my blood sugar was up over 100 in the morning or 110. And it can be really problematic. And so, we want to be looking at these numbers. This is something I do with my clients is we're really on this stuff. And this is how you design diets is around blood chemistry and what you have going on inside of you. It needs to be customized. But anyway, excess carbohydrates can cause blood sugar dysregulation. You have to look at that. So carbs might be for you. They might not be for you. Carbs can wear out insulin. Carbs can make you hungrier. And less metabolically flexible. We went into the metabolic flexibility thing. Carbs can make you hungrier. You burn off those carbs, your brain's going to send more signals. Hunger signals like ghrelin will go up, and you'll want to eat more. Okay, that's That's a big thing. Like if you do carb refeeds, you'll notice you get really hungry and ravenous for carbs afterwards. It's really hard to like steer the car back to the regular diet after doing a refeed and when you want to use those guys. And then carbs are not essential. Ouch. They're not essential like protein and fat are. Fat is absolutely essential. Over 50% of the hormones made in your body are derived from fat. You need fat in the diet. And then you also need protein to rebuild and regenerate things. Just so happens that nature packages protein and fat together naturally. It's only when we start throwing away egg yolks to get the egg whites that we start separating it. And that's all man-made stuff that we do, those disciplines. So most time in nature, you're going to see fat and protein together. It's for a reason. When you have excess protein, your body can create glucose out of that protein. So it can turn extra protein and amino acids into blood sugar to maintain blood sugar. So therefore, carbs are not essential. Now, somebody might be going, yeah, but what about optimizing, right? Because it's about optimizing. It's not just about what's essential. Well, what is optimizing to you? For who? What's their goal? What is their goal, right? I live on a super low carbohydrate diet. I have clients that are on high carbohydrate diet. So I separate my own belief based off of what the client needs. But I optimize my health just fine. I actually feel better doing barely any carbohydrates. When I do carbs now, I'm doing like sweet potatoes and raw honey. And I cycle through, though I go through phases. But what is optimizing? I think optimizing would be reduced inflammation in the body. I think that would be good. I think that to me is optimizing. Your metabolic process is going to run hot and heavy. You're not altering anything. You're not slowing anything down because of inflammation. You're not putting yourself at risk for disease. So, optimal for a football player or a professional athlete, or just even an athlete, optimal for an athlete and optimal for somebody who wants to lose some weight. Maybe they don't have a lot of activity in their day and they're working from home, is two completely different things. So we want to keep that in perspective, this optimal thing. And that's why carbs are not essential. They might benefit you, or they might not benefit you. If you guys want to lose weight, typically, for my weight loss clients, I don't like carbohydrates. I think you need to earn your carbohydrates. We need to look at blood glucose. That's a general statement, but it's definitely a starting point. It's a navigation tool that I use, which is if you're overweight and you want to lose body fat, I want to control and manage insulin. I'm going to look at fasting, and the way that you can increase fasting's effects is through higher fat, lower carb, because it keeps the client, it keeps them satiated and not as hungry. So it works really well. But the real beauty of it is the fasting portion, where you bring insulin super low and you don't spike it, so long as they're not drinking tons of coffee and getting really stressed out at work, right? Because we went over that. But that's where I like to start. So not a fan of carbohydrates and frequent eating when somebody wants to lose body weight and they need to try and fix a compromised system. People who might have adrenal stuff going on, I will keep carbohydrates in for them, because we don't want to do totally like erratic things, because it can stress the body out more. We want to slowly ease them into kind of a newer lifestyle, which is a big point to make. Wherever you're at right now, if you just totally flip things on its head, it might stress your body out. If you cut all carbs and you try to go keto right away, this is what the keto flu is your body's not adapted to using fat yet. And so you can get kind of sick. So you want to ease your way into it. And for me, I like being keto-ish personally, where you kind of go in and out. By the end of a long fast, you're in keto, and then you eat high protein, and you eat lots of vegetables and maybe some fruit or something like that. Maybe a carbohydrate, maybe a sweet potato or something. And, and there you go. So anyway, that's it. That's episode 48. CarboVORE or CarboWAR. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Go to schoolofshredpodcast.com right now and jump on the newsletter. If you're not on there right now, you're crazy. We just provide some big value here, and you guys can get the trickle effect if you go to the newsletter. I write emails most days out of the week, just going over whatever's going on in my life, different things I'm learning to help you guys reclaim, rediscover, and relearn what holistic health and fitness is. Okay, this whole school is about helping you shred your old and make better your new. Okay, and that's a better body, a better mindset, a better life. So if you guys are with me, throw some fire in the comments as we finish this guy up. Let me know if you guys have any questions, okay? Tomorrow's a Q&A. I'd like to get a couple more from you. Please ask away. Let's get a conversation going in the comments. And if you found this valuable today, go ahead and share this episode. Let's get it out to the people. Let's help people learn and start to develop a thought process based off their health and not, just follow these sound bites that are online. We need to think our way through these issues and figure out what's best for us and most optimal for us. And that's how we can reclaim and rediscover our health. So with that, school, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 a.m. I want you to stay strong and healthy in body. Stay relentless and energized in spirit. And stay determined in your pursuits today, school. That spells shred. Now go shred the day and get better in every way. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 a.m.